Hello and welcome to PTV World. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at the debate. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the political situation of the country that unfortunately has seen quite a deterioration in the previous days and months. And today, we've seen unfortunately quite a few violent clashes between the protesting workers of PTI, its leadership, and then of course the government and security officials as well. This is because the Long March or the Azadi March that had been called by the political leadership of the PTI had started earlier today and had been marching towards the federal capital. In all of these riots, we've also seen that unfortunately it is always the poor and the downtrodden that suffer, and that has been the case in today's clashes as well. And we've seen even before that Constable Kamal unfortunately lost his life. We've also seen that the KP Police Sub-Inspector Seher Gul has also lost her life, and then we've also seen that there has been a lot of clashes within different departments, the different people, individuals, and of course all of those who are marching out on the streets on the behest of what has been called a historical march, the Azadi March, a call for independence, based on the lie that has been put forward by the PTI government, PTI leadership, with reference to the US conspiracy that has of course been denied by both the current government and the leadership, the armed institutions as well. What is even more unfortunate, however, is the way that this political situation continues to bring about even more uncertainty within our country, affecting our economic situation and causing more misery and suffering to the common people of Pakistan. And this, of course, is the larger concern that we all have today. What is going to be done with reference to the political situation and the political responsibility that comes with office holding, and, of course, the leadership in different political parties as well. So that is going to be our focus in both of our segments today as well. We're also going to be talking about how the issue of the concept of demagogue has taken the country, and how the previous leadership and the previous prime minister is a true representative of a demagogue, and how that is of course affecting and seeping into our culture and the political narrative that is being spread by the PTI leadership, and then of course the responses from the ordinary people as well. For this and more, I've been joined in the studios as always by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and for our first part of the show, I've been joined online by Mr. Maqbool. He's a leader of the PPP. I've also been joined by Mr. Javed Jattoon, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. I'll start with you, Javed Saab. When we look at the current situation, of course, there is a lot that we have seen going on in the couple of days and months previously, and culminating in what has happened today and what continues to happen out on the streets at the moment also. This is, of course, very unfortunate, the way the people's lives and their security have been put into threat, and then of course the way the people have been responding to calls by the PTI leadership as well, and they of course have been manipulated with the stance of the US conspiracy and the narrative of fighting for independence. However, what is of course of larger concern is the impact this is going to have on the political and economic scenario of the country. In this entire scenario, when we look at the situation, how are we going to be looking at the political leaders, maybe our previous office bearers, with reference to their responsibility towards the citizens of Pakistan? Is this not something that we can hold them accountable for?
See,
Mr. Javed?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
Please go ahead.
I think, unfortunately, it is reflective of the failure of the political class in Pakistan, because it is a country of over 200 million people, a nuclear-capable state, and one of the most important players in the world politics as well as in the regional politics. What is happening out there is so unfortunate that I really fail to comprehend that why things have been pushed to the limit, and why the political leadership has not been able to resolve them on the negotiating table, as is the practice in all democracies in the world. Now look at what is happening. Two political groupings, one in the government and other in the opposition, having very rigid positions, and ultimately Supreme Court of Pakistan had to intervene and to resolve a very issue which could have been resolved among themselves. The issue of where they hold their public rally and how peacefully that rally could be. Violence is definitely not a reflective of a good governance in Pakistan, not a good image for the country of Pakistan. We have always been trying to project the positive image of Pakistan, and then it goes, it is blown away in few seconds when we see the images on television screens, the protesters and the police clashing with each other. It is not a banana republic, but unfortunately, I would say it is a failure of the entire political leadership in Pakistan, because they should have shown the maturity, they should have shown the wisdom and the vision and the statesmanship to resolve the issues among themselves. Elections or no elections, I think the real stakeholders in Pakistan are the people of Pakistan, over 200 million people.
Right,
You
but when you
rightly
talk
pointed
about
out.
resolving issues, you mean, of course, dialogue and being able to negotiate. But we've seen, of course, in the past as well that perhaps the PTI and its leadership are not willing to come to the table. Is that so?
I think first of all, you have to agree to disagree, and secondly, to start a dialogue is the most important thing. Dialogue, starting the dialogue is imperative. Then you go on and you discuss the thorny issues, the conflicting issues, and some are resolved and some are not resolved. But disagreeing to engage in political dialogue, I think PTI leadership shown the rigidity, and they were not able to reconcile with the situation. Probably Imran Khan believed that the kind of support base he has in Pakistan, we witnessed the large crowds attending his rallies throughout the country. And then he went for the final blow for the government, and that was calling the long march. And ultimately, he wanted the government to buckle down and accept his demands. One is the dissolution of the National Assembly, and second, calling the early elections, not
Right.
leaving an option, not leaving a
Right. Let me
space
go
for
to
the
Nadir
public.
Saab as well and talk about just these issues as well, because of course this is important. We've also seen that the Supreme Court has assigned H9 as a venue for the protest to be held. But again, this is also on the precondition that there is going to be no violent clashes and that the PTI leadership will protest and leave. But what the political leadership of the PTI plans to do, and what is said by Imran Khan as well, is that they will not leave till both these demands, as Javed Saab was talking about, are met, which of course puts us into puts the question forward whether or not the government is going to be willing to engage with the PTI if that actually happens. And if not, then how long of a situation are we looking at in terms of the protest or the sit-in that the PTI leadership plans to have, and what can be done about it? Because if this is going to continue, it's going to even add to more woes that the country is facing. Nadir Saab.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. What PTI is doing is very counterproductive to the goals of the joint government right now, and they're trying to pull Pakistan out of the economic woes that Imran Khan himself has created over the past few years. And instead of just remaining silent, actually, it would have been better if he would have helped us come out of this pit that or the hole that he dug us into. But instead, as always, Imran Khan just thinks about himself and his goals, which is how to get back into power. I don't think the sit-in will occur because Imran Khan has not managed to bring close to the target that he was thinking. He was talking about 2 million people, sorry, 20 million people. I don't think he's even gotten 20,000 people, hardly. There are some people who are coming from APK because the government is obviously supporting them over there. The ministers are leading those rallies, but from in the country, we have not seen the numbers that Imran Khan was expecting. And obviously, once he reaches the park, we will give a date to the next elections. That's his demand, correct? His demand is to give him a date. The date, we're already telling him it's going to be after August 23rd next year, and the date will be given by the Election Commission of Pakistan, not by Shehbaz Sharif or by the Pakistan People's Party, because the only authority which has the legal prerogative to give dates to election is the Election Commission of Pakistan, once caretaker comes in, obviously. So my request to all PTI workers would be that they should look at the double standards that Imran Khan has on one
Right,
hand.
but my request with reference to whether or not the option of seeking dialogue with the PTI leadership is there or not, or are there any efforts being made in that direction?
And Gobol Saab, yesterday I asked the same question and I will ask it today again. Earlier Javed Saab was talking about reconciliation plus dialogue, and I would say that a person who's known for successful dialogues and reconciliation is former President Zardari, but in this case, I mean, in this scenario, we haven't been seeing him active at all. He could put his efforts and probably things would have calmed down a bit and it would have been done long ago.
See, the government is always open to dialogues because, unlike Imran Khan, we do not brand or label anybody as Ghaddar or foreign agents. We look at everybody as Pakistani citizens and our fellow countrymen. And if the PTI wants to have a dialogue, obviously we will have a dialogue. But if Imran Khan thinks that he can bully the government, he can bully the state, he is sadly mistaken. The state is responsible not only for the government, but for every citizen of Pakistan. And by creating a law and order situation all over the country, Imran Khan is trying to blackmail the government, which obviously we have to look at the interest of every Pakistani. Not every Pakistani is a voter of Imran Khan. Hardly 7%, I was looking at the stats of the 2018 elections, hardly 7% of the country actually voted for Imran Khan. So how can he claim that he represents 220 million people or even half of that number? He doesn't, obviously. And that is why we have asked Imran Khan to peacefully come protest. We're not stopping any peaceful protest. We believe that every political party has the right to stage a protest, but they cannot derail the government, they cannot derail the system, especially in a situation where we're struggling economically, where we're trying to reach negotiation with IMF. Especially when we're trying to bring...
All right. Earlier there was also some mention with regards to whether or not Imran Khan was able to garner enough support or enough numbers, as was claimed earlier. Farrukh, how much of a relevance is that in the current scenario? I understand when it's a show of power and when there's a rally, large numbers do count. But if we're talking about a sit-in or causing trouble for the government to be able to run its regular course, then don't we just need a few numbers to be sitting in the federal capital and causing disruption?
Yeah, the number actually matters, Sana, because Imran Khan Sahib himself actually said that he is going to bring 2 million people to Islamabad, right? Because he said that we will be actually looking keenly whether he garners that kind of number or not. I think that the perception that so far we haven't seen the kind of numbers is correct. But I'm not actually going to speculate too much on whether the numbers are there or not. My concern is that today what we witnessed on the streets can be called discord, right? And who benefits from the discord? Certainly not Pakistan. I give you 3 examples. While we were fighting each other, India actually went and joined a 13-nation Asian trading alliance supported by the US. And India has got the position of a guest of honor, right? While we were fighting each other, Yasin Malik was handed a life sentence by Indian kangaroo courts. And while we are actually fighting each other, the talks with IMF are continuing and we know what exactly is happening. This doesn't telegraph the kind of stability you need to actually win confidence of the fund. And finally, when we fight each other, what are we burning? We are burning Pakistani property. We have seen, vehicles actually being torched, they being broken as well. So in this situation, in this pandemonium, what the enemy could not achieve, we are gifting the enemy already. And if you remember that comic strip from Peanuts, where Charlie Brown actually is trying to kick a football and Lucy removes it and he falls every time and he tries once again repeatedly and people ask him, why are you trying again and again? Lucy is going to actually remove the ball in any case, and he says that someday she is going to relent. She never relents, right? How many times do we have to go through this that we start learning that it is not in our benefit? Remember 2014 when similar kind of situation was there, when there was a sit-in and that continued for months. At that time the Chinese president was supposed to come to Pakistan and we were going to announce CPEC. It was delayed and that was the time that was needed for Iran and other powers to actually forge ahead with the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, and that actually opened Chabahar. Luckily today Chabahar is a sister port of Gwadar, but at that time it was not being seen as that. India was trying to actually undermine your project and start its own. So we keep on doing these things, these terrible things to ourselves, and then we say that the world doesn't listen to us. I mean, my concern is not who wins or who loses. The point is, in any case, I'm losing every day. Why should I lose?
Absolutely, and of course, this points to the fact whether or not there are people who actually understand that, especially who are sitting where there is decision making going on, and then of course the public at large, and for their opinion to be able to formed in such a way that they understand that is not something in their favor. But again, when we've seen since the ouster of the previous government, that there has been a lot of polarization in Pakistan, and even now we've seen that there are people who have been outrightly supporting the protests, and then also there have been people who have had reservations with the way it has been handled by the security officials of the government. Mr. Javed, when we look at this current scenario and the way people have been responding to the things that have been going on today and previously as well, do you think that the polarization has increased? And if so, where do you think the balance is tilted more heavily, especially after perhaps today's events? Do you think that there is more support for the PTI workers and its leadership, or the kind of clashes that we have seen has garnered more support for the current government?
Sana, I think polarization has been pushed to the brink. We are staring at the abyss. What else can we expect as far as the worsening political situation and polarization in Pakistan is concerned? On the one hand, we see a very rigid position taken by Imran Khan. He is not showing any flexibility, short of dissolution of assemblies and calling of elections. On the other hand, government has taken a very strong position that elections will be held on time, that is in 2023 and in August, most probably, not before that. So what we see is a very rigid position taken by the two sides, and there is not a single voice of sanity as far as the political class is concerned. You need to have a flexibility. You need to talk about the possibilities, and you can reach an agreement. Maybe not today, maybe day after tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And now, what is the problem? What we see is that the people are forgotten. What are the problems of the people? They don't have clean drinking water. They don't have health facilities. We don't have decent educational system in Pakistan. We do not have enough of electricity and gas shortages. And of course, the inflation, one of the biggest issues being faced by the people of Pakistan. And what the political class is talking about, they are not mentioning the issues of the people of Pakistan. Politics is not being done as far as the people's issues or problems are concerned. It is a power game, a very brutal, ruthless power game being played out in the open. And what we see is a very selfish kind of vested interest that is being pursued as far as the two political camps are concerned. Now, I think, I was amazed that instead of resolving the issue among themselves, they look towards the security establishment. When you are in opposition, you start blaming the security establishment of Pakistan. And when you come into power, you are muted. You don't talk about the role of the establishment. When Imran Khan was in power, he was talking about the same page. Repeatedly, day in and day out, we used to hear this particular statement coming from the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that the armed forces leadership and the civilian leadership are the same page. While the current government, which was in opposition, they were talking about the interference on part of the establishment, and they were even naming names. They were naming the chief of the army staff and the chief of the intelligence services. So I think the roles have changed. Nothing else has changed. And I think
Javed Saab, yeah, Javed Saab, there's another exercise which was conducted in Supreme Court today. Do you think that it was too late and it should have been done around 4 or 5 days ago?
I think absolutely. If the Supreme Court had to intervene, it should have intervened at least when the Long March was announced by the
No, but sir, with due respect, Javed Jadun Sahab, it was a prayer by a petitioner that actually, activated the whole proceeding. Otherwise, it wasn't a suo motu in this way. So we can say that the petitioner should have actually moved the court earlier.
Or maybe
Yes,
government could have,
but
went in.
if you look at the comments, of Justice Ijazul Hasan, he said we are acting like an arbiter. When you are an arbiter, then I think you should have taken the suo motu notice. They always had this option of going for the suo motu notice, and that option wasn't exercised, and every I think
No,
opportunity
sir,
was
but
lost when you come to this pass that
Jazul
when.
sahab, sorry to cut you again, but again, the question is the political parties which actually hold our mandate, they're unable to actually resolve their disputes, and then unelected institutions are supposed to actually intervene.
Yes, yes, Farrukh, I totally agree. This is what I was emphasizing, that the political class has failed to resolve their own issues, and then they look towards the stuff. Even today, there was a lot of unconfirmed news was circulating that maybe the security establishment brokered a deal, kind of a deal between the government and the and PTI. It was, of course, it was denied by both the sides. And now we stand where we stand today, that Supreme Court has issued a judgment that the PTI should be given a particular place in Islamabad to hold a rally. But we don't know what exactly are the details of the decision, because is the PTI are the PTI supporters going to stay in Islamabad, or they're going to disperse after the rally? That is not clear. If they stay in the capital, then you can witness the kind of a pandemonium which was witnessed during 2014. They start moving closer towards the red zone, the Appara, and then you go towards the red zone and breach
Right,
the defense
absolutely. And that is,
lines.
of course, a valid concern. Now, there's when we look at the current scenario and what has been going on, especially today, do you think that perhaps the government or the security forces or the measures that were taken could have been perhaps beefed up, or could have had a different strategy in order to resolve them? Is there anything that you think could have been done more in terms of preventing what happened today or in handling the situation? And also, when we talk about what sort of a potential the coming days carry in terms of wherever the situation can go, do you think that the government is fully prepared in any possible scenarios in order to deal with them, whether or not the workers actually stay in the capital or not, or if escalation occurs? Are we fully prepared to deal with whatever's coming?
Yes, the government is fully prepared to deal with any and all circumstances. And Rana Sanaullah, Shehbaz Sharif Saab, they're all very experienced people, and they've served in similar roles in the past. Shehbaz Sharif Saab has been CM, and Rana Sanaullah has been Home Minister of Punjab. So definitely they can deal with any situation and maintain law and order and ensure that
Right, but
the
what would be the
citizen.
strategy? I want to understand what the measures would be taken in case they stay.
Well, obviously, we've already made it clear that we will not allow them to prolong any protest. If they want to come and leave, they're very welcome to do that. But if they want to prolong this and try to destroy the system or create hurdles in governance, we reserve the right to arrest their leaders, including Imran Khan. And I'm sure
Okay.
if we put up the case in the courts as well, that Imran Khan is creating a law and order situation and creating trouble for public at large and the common man, then obviously I think the court will either order Imran Khan to leave or authorize the government to arrest him as well. As far as you were asking about what else we could have done, we are already being criticized for being a little too harsh, which I do not agree with. I think if anybody wants to blackmail the government, they have to be dealt with strictness, not with leniency, because then any day anyone can come and try to challenge the government. We saw that during Imran Khan's tenure as well, when TLP obviously were headed towards the capital and they were threatening to put the system at a complete standstill. And Imran Khan had to negotiate with them and listen to their demands, agree to them, and give in
Right.
eventually.
Gabal sir, this
But
position of yours actually seems to be an evolution from your previous stance, your parties, because in 2013, when you were in power, Tyrell Qadri Sahab came to Islamabad, he sat there and you tolerated his position despite the fact that there were many provocations, but you did not actually try to use any harsh means. So today something has changed and your position has evolved, sir?
yes, obviously a lot has changed. Pakistan was in a much better situation back then economically and in terms of its relationship with its international partners, be it China or any other country for that matter. Right now, we cannot afford any more hindrances. We need to focus on recovery, the road to recovery, and for that, we need to thwart any attempts to further put Pakistan's economy under stress, because we are on the verge of default. We do not want to end up like Sri Lanka is today, and for that, it is absolutely necessary that we cannot allow any leniency for any misadventures. We have to be very strict, precise, and a timely action against any such elements trying to challenge the government.
Gobol Sahab, you've mentioned rightly that, of course, in the previous government, PTI government, Imran Khan Sahab, he obviously, talked with TLP at that time, and he agreed on certain things and did not agree on certain things, and of course, it went all well after that. I just wanted to ask you if similar kind of situation is there, and do you think that government would be agreeing to few things of the opposition PTI right now, or they would completely say no to them, number one, and number two, don't you think that Pakistan People's Party is keeping itself on a safe distance from whatever is going on right now, because we have seen in the past that Pakistan People's Party never took these kind of positions?
No, I would not agree with Pakistan People's Party being at a distance, because in Sindh we are in government, and today in Karachi we were also very strict against any protesters trying to create a law and order situation. If there were any peaceful protests, we did allow them, but in certain areas of Karachi, protesters were trying to cause harm to police vehicles and to state property, and we dealt with them very strictly. You must have seen those videos from Numaish in Karachi and near Shara Qaidin. So I would not agree with that point. And your other question about, sorry, what was the other question?
It was about what to agree with and what not to agree.
Yes, if Imran Khan asked for immediate dissolution of the assembly and for elections next month, obviously we will not agree to that. But as far as elections are concerned, we have made it clear many times that elections will be held once the economy of Pakistan is in a better situation, because right now I don't even think it's financially viable to hold elections, because it's a huge expenditure and burden on the national exchequer.
Right.
So we need
and
to
when the
first
ECP
restore the
also
economy.
decides. Thank you very much, Mr. Nadir Gabol, for joining us. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. And thank you very much, Mr. Javed Chazoon, for also being part of the show. What we're going to now be talking about is also similar with reference to the political situation of the country, but then also talking about a particular area or a concept which, of course, has influenced PTI's leadership as well, and then, of course, has caused negative consequences for our country and our people, unfortunately. The idea of a demagogue, and Imran Khan being a demagogue, because a lot of the characteristics that do exist have been found in his leadership, and that, of course, has caused a lot of problems as well. We've been joined on this segment by Mr. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who's a political analyst, and we'll talk more about this with him as well. But just to talk about the main characteristics of a demagogue is, of course, the issue of spreading terror, of lying, of being able to drive emotional appeals and then give false accusations, promising impossible tasks, and also insulting different leadership and competitors. This, of course, is something that we have seen in the past as well. But before we talk more about that as well, something similar that I want to say with reference to our earlier discussion, what Mr. Nadir Gabol talked about, how if the situation deteriorates, then the arrest of the political leadership of the PTI, including Imran Khan, is on the table. And when we talk about the emotional appeal and the sort of following that Imran Khan has, this, of course, has its own consequences as well. And it's going to be perhaps difficult to deal with that. I'll talk to Ms. Dr. Niaz first about that issue and then move on to demagogue as well. Dr. Niaz, when we talk about the potential arrest of the PTI leadership, and specifically Imran Khan, don't you think that this is going to cause a different sort of backlash? Because irrespective of the political to disagreements that many people, even PTI followers, may have with him, there is a sort of cult following that is there, and there is, of course, that emotional appeal, that heroism that has been attached with Imran Khan and his personality for a while now, and that sort of backlash may occur across the country as well. Do you think that we're prepared for that as well?
Well, it's a very complex situation. On the one hand, you have the PTI with its highly dubious aims, narratives, and tactics. So, it's talking about, this conspiracy for which there isn't even, an iota of evidence that the US played any role in removing the PTI government from power. But the PTI is whipping up emotions around that issue because it's an issue that has a strong emotive connection in Pakistan, given our very troubled history of relationships with the US. So it wants to come to Islamabad and have this prolonged dharna in Islamabad and force the government to announce elections. Obviously, that's a very undemocratic behavior. And if you look at the past history of PTI compared to other parties like PPP and even JUI, their dharnas, their protests are usually peaceful. So Bilawal came with his long march. They made a speech at D-Chowk, and then they just dispersed. Similarly, JUI had a very prolonged sit-in, but it was inside a park, and it was very peaceful again. But if you compare all that with what PTI does, especially in 2014, it was an extremely disruptive dharna, and which included attacks on your own TV station. One cannot agree with what PTI is trying to do. One recognizes that peaceful protest is the right of all citizens as well as political groups. But then PTI is planning to go beyond that. But still, at the same time, I would still say that the government has overreacted. I don't think PTI would have been able to muster much numbers, given that it doesn't have the backing of strong groups that backed it in 2014. A lot of politicians with deep pockets, a lot of strong non-civilian state actors. So I think if they had just allowed PTI to just play on with its act, it would probably have fizzled out. But now there's been, I think, an overreaction. But still, the bigger issue is the fact that I think the bigger blame still goes back to PTI for having these very dubious aims and tactics. And in all that, if you try to again arrest Imran Khan, I think that might also be an overkill. I think there's also already an order from the Supreme Court not to arrest him. So I would say let it play out. And I think in most probability
in the situation, if the sit-in actually prolongs. Yes,
right. Sana, I just very quickly wanted clarification from you. When you said that first I'll go to Dr. Niaz Mirza, then to demagogue, did you mean Raja Faisal?
No, not at all. Then the issue of being a demagogue, the BTI leadership.
I'm certainly not
at all.
So Sana, I wanted to mention here, I think here we had a problem. And the problem was, to me, I think PTI has been conducting all of these processions throughout the country, and government did not create any troubles for them, and it was hailed by everyone that this is how the political governments should work. And here today, I think it should have been maintained, should have been allowed, and no crackdown should have been done, and everyone should have been allowed to come, conduct the procession and go home. This is how we should move on, because if we in a democratic country where democracy is prevailing, if we follow these kind of norms, then of course problems would be created for population at large. I mean, there are thousands of people who are getting affected by this political chaos. I've been watching one of the footages yesterday. There was a young man walking on the road, and he was crying as well. And obviously the cameraman, he asked him, what has happened. Then he said, my vehicle is not moving on and I have to go to Multan. And I'm talking about Gujar Khan. He was in Gujar Khan at that time and he kept on walking. He was asked, where are you going? Then he said, my sister has died and I have to be at home. So these are the people who are getting affected. There are so many people who got affected.
Because of the gridlock, right?
Exactly. Yeah, okay. So I think we need to move on smoothly with better decisions.
Right. Very quickly, I just wanted to clarify. You were saying that Imran Khan's arrest is also on the table. Let me clarify.
According to Nadisa.
Yeah, yes. But Honorable Court actually has prohibited government from actually arresting him.
Yeah.
And then it has allowed him to hold that procession or sit-in or whatever in H9. So we don't know whether it will happen that way or whether it is going to be different, but this is where we are at because of the court.
So if the sit-in actually prolongs 2 days and months as well, then that is still in order?
Yeah, actually Imran Khan Saab has said that we are not going to leave Islam, but till the time we get an election date and then an announcement, a clear announcement as well. So in that case, I think that there is going to be some kind of confusion. But right now, there was a temporary order. I think that if this issue escalates, the court is going to look at it again.
All right. Dr. Niaz, I'll come to you, Faisal. Dr. Niaz, when you talked about the issue of course, the US conspiracy and the lies that are being spread, the issue, of course, remains with the fact that the way it is perceived by the people, whether or not something is a lie, if it is believed so, and the kind of consequences that it has on the way the public is forming its opinion, that's the real problem as well. And then we've also seen that there has been a lot of insulting language that has been used by the PTI leadership, by Imran Khan as well, to the political leadership, to different parties, to female leadership as well, particularly Maryam Nawaz, which of course is in bad taste. And there is a lot of influence that this also has on the way his followers are looking at him and are forming their own opinions, and then of course leading their own lives. Don't you think that the kind of impact that Imran Khan's leadership is having on the people of Pakistan or its youth is something that needs to be dealt with and needs to be called out on?
Well, certainly. I mean, the thing is, you see so many groups whipping up these kind of emotions. So, we've had these kind of dharnas by Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan. And, in many ways, PTI is generating from, a mainstream national party into a group like TLP, which, uses a lot of emotive appeals. So with TLP, of course, it's, religion and finality of prophethood. With PTI, it's a number of issues. There's the issue of corruption, which finds some, strong emotions, especially within the middle class. Then there is the issue of, independent foreign policy, national self-respect, and to some extent even religion, because even yesterday he was saying that this is a jihad, not a political struggle. So, he blends all these issues, which finds some emotive appeal in certain sections of, urban population of Pakistan, which, surprisingly includes, the most educated people in Pakistan. And it all comes together in the form of, TV talk shows, social media. So he has this knack of, these kind of tools, and, propagates his fairly false messages around these kind of themes: corruption, national self-respect, religion, just issues, and tries to whip up emotions. Now, obviously, because of, these tools like social media, TV talk shows, and so on, it's very easy to, reach out to people. And even in your own friends, relatives, if you try to have, a rational discussion, it's becoming more and more difficult to do that, especially with PTI fans. They are just hooked to their, TV talk show information, social media information. You try to, talk to them about strategy, policies, legislation, and they even, very educated people are not willing to do that. So that is really, the biggest challenge, that you have all these middle class led political parties that are creeping up, And the hope normally around the world is that if you have middle class finally entering politics, it improves politics. But if you look at the kind of middle class led groups that we've had, MQM, TLP, PTI, they've actually made politics worse, and they've taken things into this, populist realm where there is no policy strategy, where there's just whipping up of emotions, of grievances. So that's what makes it even, more dangerous that, the
Yeah,
most
Dr.
educated
Niaz,
people in Pakistan
Dr.
are
Niaz,
falling for this.
talking about the policy, about the policy, do you think that it's high
Faisal,
time?
unfortunately, that's all we have time for, and we'll have to close the show. But thank you very much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, for being a part of the debate and talking to us at length. That's all we have for now. We'll see you tomorrow.